Hi folks, let's talk about routines. I'm going to share in this video today a few of the highlights and sort of an outline of the workshop I teach about how to build in routines to your life as a parent or in your professional life that actually help you do the things you want to do. In a few weeks I'll be teaching this workshop very focused on the transition to kindergarten and how to build in routines that support both kids and parents. So just a heads up on that. But today I just want to talk mostly about the heart of routines and what that means and how you build routines outward from the heart, which is the opposite of how most people go about it. So let's dive right in. First, let me talk about two truths about routines, things that people may not always realize or don't always know. The first is that a routine is simply a sequence of actions that are repeated fairly regularly. That's all they are. So I hear a lot of people talk about how they don't have any good routines, or that there are good routines and bad routines. There's no inherently good routine or bad routine, right? A routine that works for one person or one child may not work for another. And that's because what makes a routine good or bad is actually how effective it is at helping you meet your purposes and your needs. All right, so I want to just get rid of that idea that you have either good routines or bad routines in your life. Nope, you have routines that are either serving you or not serving you, and that's a whole different kind of adjustment. The second truth about routines is that there's this idea that we have them without realizing them. Okay, so the second truth is that we have routines without even realizing we have routines. And that's something I hear also a lot from folks. We have no routine, I hear. But what folks really mean is, we're late every day. I'm going to tell you that if you're late somewhere every day, you have a routine, because you have a sequence of actions that are happening every day that probably led up to you being late. Or being late is one of those actions. Again, doesn't make it good or bad. The question is it serving you? It might very well be serving you to go somewhere late, even if it makes you feel bad. And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit. So, routines are simply sequences of actions. They're not inherently good or bad. And a lot of times when people think they have no routine, they do have a routine. It just may or may not be serving them. So those are things I want you to think about. Oh, one last truth about routines. They are not always tied to time. So again, a lot of folks think that routine means you do the same thing at 7 p.m. every day, or when you wake up, your morning routine is, at 5 a.m. every day, and if you sleep until 6, you can't do it. Or sleep in until 10, you can't do it. Although I want to know which one of you is sleeping in until 10, because I want that life. That's a whole nother story. All right, so routines are not always tied to time. Sometimes it's about an event triggering it, right? After we eat dinner, this thing happens. So after we come home from school, this thing happens. So it's not always about a specific time. All right, so get rid of those myths about routines. Let's talk about what the heart of a routine is. The heart of a routine is not the time. It's not the schedule, which is what a lot of people think. No, the heart of routine is two things. One is your purposes or needs. Why do you want a routine in place? Or why is a routine in place? Is it there to provide comfort and familiarity for you and your child? Is the routine there to get you transition from point A to point B? Maybe that's from the morning to school, or maybe that's from the playgroup to home, whatever it is. Okay, so what's the purpose of the routine? What are the needs it's filling? That's one part. The other part of a routine is, what are the intentional actions? And this is important because routines are made up of intentional actions, intentional things that you're doing to help, usually a transition, right? A transition from one part of the day to the next, a transition from one activity to the next. And so this idea of what are the intentional parts? So I'll tell you that for me, for example, for my personal morning, I get up before the kids. I have a couple of very intentional things. I eat breakfast first thing because I know I get cranky when I don't. I make my coffee, and there's other pieces to it. But things that aren't intentional, just have become part of my routine, are things like feeding the cat, because otherwise she'll just keep meowing at me, or even putting on getting on relaxing clothes, like not getting dressed for the day. It's just something I just did, and now it's part of my routine. So the intentional actions are the ones that really serve your purposes and needs. That's part of the routine. So that's the heart of a routine. What's your purposes or needs, and what are the intentional actions built in the routine? Right? And that's where you start from, right? You don't start from what other people's routines are, or what you see other parents doing that you think you should be doing. You start from what your purposes and needs are, and then you build outward from there, and you build the intentional actions from there. And so in the workshop I'm teaching about transition to kindergarten, we're going to talk about what are the fundamental purposes and needs that you want to support your child with in their transition, and also that you need as the parents. And we're going to build the kindergarten routines, both the going to school and the coming home from school or daycare programs. You build in those routines based on your personal family's needs and purposes. Not from everybody else's, not what you saw on Pinterest, not what your neighbor down the street who is a stay-at-home parent with one child does if you've got 3 kids and you work. It's just different. It's fine. But you start from your purposes and needs, and then you build the intentional actions from there. So that's really what I wanted to share today. That's the heart of routine. In my workshop, I'll be talking in a lot more detail about the steps to take to build up that routine, to make it a reality. It involves things like being really specific about what your actions are and adding in one at a time. It involves analyzing what routines exist now that you may not even realize, and how to take away some of those actions that may not be serving you. It involves how you add in sort of the stuff of life. One example I have is bedtime routines. We very intentionally have a story, we very intentionally have some snuggle time, but we also have the kids brush their teeth and use the bathroom because it's just stuff that has to happen. So we'll talk about that too with the kindergarten transition. And the other thing we'll talk about is what I call hangers-on. These other parts of our routine that sort of happen, and we don't always know if we should keep them or not. And I'll share some fun personal examples. It involves yelling through bathroom doors, but it works. So we'll talk about that in the workshops too. But the bottom line is today, I want you to walk away knowing that the heart of a routine are your purposes and needs as a family. What do you need to get out of this routine? And then also, what are the few very specific intentional actions that you want to build into the routine? And if you know those things, and you can build just a little bit at a time, and be okay doing just a little bit of it at a time, you're going to be able to build routines in your life that not only look good or maybe help the day go smoother, but frankly actually serve your essential values. And that's really what it's all about. Thanks so much for watching.